If you're going to be in the sales conversation, why not just be yourself? Is there anything else that I'm missing? Where are my blind spots? That's why you need a coach.
The other thing people need to remember is if you're doing something, you're going to make mistakes. If we just stay in our lanes and grow the pie collectively, we all win.
This is the rock and roll startup. It's business, it's music, it's entrepreneurship at its finest.
Welcome to the Levelin Up podcast with Brigham, Blackham, and
Brenden Blackham.
That's right. That's my little brother. Now, we are going to be having an awesome conversation. And what was the name of your podcast?
I'm the host of the Rock and Roll Startup.
Sweet. Now, we're going to be talking about how social media is just a storytelling platform. And then I'm actually going to give you a sneak peek to an ebook that I wrote that's all about improving your social media and leveling up your social media.
Yeah. And we're going to dive into a few topics here. I've got it listed out here on my phone of kind of getting to can turn the focus of the podcast back on Brigham because he doesn't get a chance to share his story. And a lot of people don't know the background that he has. And so being the younger brother, observing his journey has been cool from my perspective, just because I work in marketing and content on a regular. I work for a company called Content Supply for my day job. I own a small agency called Blackthorn Media as well on the side where I do a lot of freelance content production. And so this is my whole world is this thing, but I'm really bad at doing it for myself.
And we're going to change that
We're
today.
gonna fix that. So we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of what that is for companies and for us and as individuals, about the importance of getting something out there, because there's a story that we all have to share. And Brigham hasn't got to share his story a ton from what I've seen. And so I kind of wanted to dive into that, but I don't know the structure of what you're doing. So I'll turn that. You do what you got to do.
No worries. So we're first going to start off. Brenden, tell us a little bit more about why you do what you do. Tell us what's your passion in social media and in content creation.
Well, I started with social media and content creation about 10, 12 years ago because I played in a band called the Bombshell Flowers. And it used to be
formerly known as Melting Rain.
Right. It used to be known as Melting Rain. And so we made content to promote shows, promote music, promote albums, do ads. I taught myself how to do paid ads on Facebook, made stuff on Canva before it was a bigger platform. It's huge now. That platform was just itty bitty. I just was too cheap to pay for Photoshop at the time. And so
many of us are.
Right. And so I was making a lot of content for the band, thinking of different ways to advertise shows, really stressed to just sell tickets, because honestly, a lot of places are like, if you don't pull up 20 people, we'll never have you play again. And so there's that pressure. It's really not that expensive. Honestly, you just shell out the $200 and like life goes on and they'll get over it if no one shows up. But at the end of the day, at the time, I wanted to grow something because I love music. I wanted to be the next Blink-182 or whatever. And so that's where the journey started. But I didn't know that was a skill set people paid for, but that was just kind of an extension of being a musician. So fast forward to mission and then getting back home, and I was a music major for a little while, and all this stuff is really tied into that. So that's where the content creation side started. And then after doing sales for a little while and then popping back to, I really wanted to do marketing because it was stuff that I'm passionate about. I enjoy it. I enjoy the process of creating something, working with people, consulting, and thinking about how we can take the story that people have and turn it into something valuable. It's what drives me often. So I meet with a lot of clients on a daily, probably 5 to 10 clients a day at times, where we talk about what they're doing, what they're trying to do to scale up or leveling up, like you're saying, right? That everybody has a story to tell and content to make, and a lot of people need help with that process. And so to be able to be a part of that is fantastic. So the passion that helps me is being able to see people hit their goals, reach those, help them scale, but also the importance of just being able to make a better product and improve it as we go.
So I think that's a great answer. And if I was going to answer that same question, what drives me, what I'm passionate about, I think it really comes down to helping people live in their genius zone, helping people see that we all have a story that's worthwhile. And if you are really understanding that content is king, that social media is just a platform to share stories, you can start to create amazing connections with people. You can start to find ways that it's not just about, hey, look, I did this thing. It's, how do I provide value? How do I solve a problem? How do I give someone more than I expect to get in return? And when you give so much value, you solve so many problems, eventually people are going to know, like, and trust you. And this is just a platform that allows you to share amazing stories. So Brenden, let's go to this first topic. Tell us what's the first topic.
I kind of want to dive into you have a background in theater and entertainment, and how does that help you when it comes to the investing in real estate as well as business in general? Because for those of you who don't know, Brigham has done Hill Center theater plays, and if you're in the Utah scene, that was a bigger deal than most. That's like a step just barely below like a Broadway level stuff. And Brigham also graduated with an acting degree as well. So the being on stage, being in front of people, being funny, improv. He was on improv troops as well. And so I got dragged to all these things, and I willfully went to a lot of them too. That's very fun. But growing up, that was a lot of my time was spent seeing Brigham on stage. And so being able to understand how does that help you with what you do now? Because you're not on stage all the time, but you use those same skills in what you do. So tell me about that journey. Tell your audience about that journey and about how that is relevant for people nowadays.
Absolutely. Okay, so my theatrical background, I got the acting bug in 8th grade. 8th grade. I did my very first play. I was Friar Tuck in Robin Hood, and it was a little play that we read the book, and then my teacher's like, what if we just wrote a play version of it? So it was very poorly written because we had 6th, 7th, and 8th graders collaborating to write this. It was awful, but it was so much fun.
Right.
And we had such a blast. I had this big stuffed like 12 pillow costume. You remember this? I had a sword that I made out of a a 2x4, and I'd had this dorky fight that I did with my best friend Kenny. We even broke swords on stage, almost hurt people in the audience, which don't do that. I learned you need to make sure you actually practice your sword fights. But
shout out to Kenny.
Shout out to Kenny Todd. I love that guy. Best friend since I was 3 years old. But one of the things that I realized was when you tell a compelling story, even if it's not very good, like that was one that I would not categorize as good. It was barely over sucky.
Yeah.
But it was still fun.
It was a story.
It was a story. Yeah, it wasn't the story. It wasn't a good story, but it was a story. And one of the things that I learned from that is I have a voice. I have a way that I can contribute to this world in ways that I didn't realize before. Because before I did anything with theater, I was not shy, but I was almost always picked on because I was loud. And I couldn't sit still, and I got a little distracted because I have, a little bit of ADHD, which I call a dude has dreams.
Yes.
Yeah.
We all got it.
We all got it.
Everybody
We all
in the
have
family,
it.
we all, enjoy
It's
that
that
gene.
creative bug. But because I have that passion, it's something that when you focus that passion that into a story, then you can start to have a lot of value that comes out of it. So after 8th grade, I started doing something called National History Day. Now, I don't know if you remember this. I did that 3 times where we went to state and we won at state. I took second my first year doing it. I took first my second year.
This was acting, by the way.
This was an acting.
Sometimes when I did history fair, it was like you got a poster board and it pitched something about the Beatles and the penicillin for another year. And so I was for
Beatles and penicillin were your two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I mean,
not at the same time.
The impact in music and how that impacted history and culture. Like Beatles were huge on that, the British invasion.
Yeah.
So there's great content in terms of history there. Then also penicillin because Dad's a drug dealer.
Nice. Mine was Martin Luther. I talked about Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, the
revolutionist
15 theses guy.
Yeah. 15, 95 theses.
That's the one.
That's all right. More than one.
Are you sure it's 95? That's a lot.
Now I feel like I need to look that up. Fact check me. Thanks. But had Martin Luther, and then I had Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and I had Bob Hope. And that was one of those times when I wrote my own play. It was like a 12-minute gig. Maybe it was 10 minutes. I wrote my own script. I found my own content. I was able to express it. And this was a monologue. So it gave me a platform to perform. And I went all the way to nationals with it. And I was like, I'm not only good at this, I really loved it. Right. So I've done multiple things. Like I did a stand-up gig with Brett. I don't remember if I told you this. You probably came to it. I think it might've been on your mission, but Brett and I did, an hour special, both of us, like a 2-hour gig of stand-up. And that got me connected to Lawrence Gardner, who is a very well-to-do producer with a little radio show that we did locally. And I did a radio show for 3 years. Every single weekend, we would have a brand new script. And we have 10 to 12 minutes where we would riff a very dramatic podcast style play. It was so much fun.
I wish they would have recorded that as a podcast
They-
because
I
that
know.
was such, those would be good ones to look back on.
I'm gonna literally ask him, because if you
we can-
guys got
if we
that
can turn it
vibe,
back
you would
into-
you would freaking love it.
Well, it's
so
just
good.
old school radio. I mean,
Old school radio
with
show.
practical effects. That's one thing. Like I'm with the music background that I
Mhm.
have. When a lot of those effects you can just trigger with just a sample, but these guys were like,
We did
boots are
Foley.
walking. They have freaking boots on a table.
Yeah, you're
and then
opening
a
an old
microphone.
gate. You
Right.
actually
They
have
actually had
a
a
gate.
gate that they were opening. So
And
it's pretty fun to watch
so
because you'd
fun.
go and see it and you'd be like, oh shoot, this is how it was done 100 years ago.
Mhm.
100%. Like radio shows in the 30s and 40s. This is how it was done. And so it was fun for that element. Sad they don't keep doing it, but that was
Yeah,
interesting.
it's called Life Under the Horseshoe. It's so fun.
It was great. It was
I
great.
missed that.
Stories were great.
But I did that for 3 years. All during college, I enjoyed doing that. And all through high school, I had an opportunity to do plays and to express myself by acting. And one of the things I discovered by doing that is when you have the ability to step into a character, it's no longer about how you feel. It's about, if I was this person, that magic if I was this person in these circumstances, how would I respond to this? And then you just get to play. And it was one of the first times in my life that I realized, if you can play and it's in the right circumstances, you can take an audience on a ride and they can have a great experience. They can have a gift. I had in one of my professional situations with acting, I had a good friend, Daniel Hess, who said, give the audience a gift. This is the first time they've ever seen this play, most likely, and it might be the last time they ever hear the story. So give the audience a gift. You think about it as a performer. If you think of this as a service, you're giving them something that is of immense value. Theater's ephemeral and fleeting. It's not something that you can grasp. You are in there, it happens, and it's gone. It's not a play that gets recorded and then you get to experience it over and over. You have it live. It's like live music. There's nothing like it.
Now you can try, and they try and capture it. And even when they have live plays, when they record it, it's nothing like being in the moment, like being behind a drum kit or behind a guitar and there's 200 people in the crowd, 1,000 people in the crowd. The connection you share when you're sharing that is huge, because there's, I swear, like the frequencies are different when you're in person versus what can be captured when you are listening to it pre-recorded. And your ear's a little more forgiving live, I feel like, sometimes too, because of the way that you're able to convey emotions. You can listen to something back and it's cool and it's great, but being there in the moment is huge, because like you're saying, it's almost like a sales conversation, same type of deal, where that first time you got to share that story, you want it to be dialed in, because if you don't have it dialed in, then that means that you lost the one opportunity, the one chance. You might only talk with this person once. So you make an impression. So it translates across the entertainment and the music industry and theater into business really well that way. That's the cross sections of that. So do you find that as you look back on those years, because I mean, you've done so many plays when you were in college down at Dixie and at BYU and all these different places, when it comes to that character, do you feel like you play a character when you're doing your sales, your outbound calls, or when you're meeting with people? Or do you feel like you're purely yourself? You just have found ways to have other characters kind of tap into that? Like, what is that process like?
Okay, so if I understand your question, it's how do you stay genuine when you're in the sales process?
For sure.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And for me, I like to think of this as, if you're going to be in a sales conversation, why not just be yourself? Part of me is I like to play and goof off. Not a lot of people know that about me yet, right? But they need to, right? I was the captain. They don't know me.
If they think you're all serious, they don't know you.
They don't know me well
enough. They
enough.
haven't gotten a chance to sit down for 5 minutes with you.
Right. Now, one of the things I had in college was when I was in our improv troupe, I did my first year and had a great time, but then I became the captain of that and I took it very serious. And the thing is, when you take comedy serious, you get funnier.
You do.
I studied something. What's interesting is when you're studying comedy, not funny, but when you get those principles into your head, that allows you to open up and be more fun.
Yep.
Because you can be in the moment. Now, coming back to your question, what was it? I totally spaced it.
Basically about authenticity.
Authenticity, yeah.
Not in sales and marketing, because being purely yourself is super important, because if someone hears, oh, he's in theater, is he acting?
Is he
Is he
acting?
faking this? Because if you're good at acting, it's just like in sales. If you learn the principles of how to portray a message to make someone feel something, you can use it for better or for worse. And so how do you stay authentic in the process of what you do?
For me, I love the word genuine. You can feel when someone's being genuine. And I don't know the easiest way to say that, but you literally, there's like a frequency or something that when you are being sincere, when you actually care about someone, you're listening to them with the intent of, how do I serve you? How do I help you? That's how you stay genuine. But if it's all about, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? Am I going to make this $50,000 sale on this house or no? Because if it's all about you, that's manipulation. But if it's about them, if you discover that this isn't right for them, you just be like, you know what, we're done with this conversation, and that's okay.
I think that's important in my background, because I've sold things in the past that weren't things that I had as very much passionate about. Selling
Pest control.
Right, pest control, I didn't have a ton of passion for. At the time I did, because you drink the Kool-Aid kind of, and you're just constantly studying about bugs and killing the bugs. And you can talk a lot of people. I mean, it's only $500 a year. I mean, if someone impulse buys on that, it's not that big of a deal. They're going to be fine. Even if they're super poor.
Are you going to kill the bugs? Yes. You're like, okay, I feel fine about
You'll
it.
feel fine about it. Right. But it just got to the point where it just gets old to constantly have to talk people into something. That the thing that's shifted for me now that I've swept into an industry where I can actually have passion behind everything that I touch and do, the conversations are very simple. It's like, oh, I don't think this is going to be right for you. Like, I genuinely just don't. Like, you want to make 180 videos a month, but you've only got $200 a month budget. This is a bad idea to go into debt for that. Let's not do that. Do what you can, film it on your own, and we'll coach you. We'll be a friend, but we're not going to, like, you don't have the investment bandwidth to do that. Or if it's like, hey, I want to grow a YouTube channel and monetize it to make $1 million a year. It's like, Mr. Beast doesn't even do that on his videos. He loses money on the video, and then after a year or two, he'll make money. That's why he started other products and he's selling other things. And the advertisers he partners up with help pay him. So it's reframing. After you learn more about the different elements, it helps you frame and be more of a consultative role. And that's what I've found. Like you're saying, authenticity is huge. If you're not authentic, people can smell it from a mile away. I've had it in my past. Like when I was an LDS missionary, I felt like the first couple months I was out there, I wasn't the most authentic, because I was shifting my lifestyle so much that I wasn't able to truly be myself. It wasn't until I was out there for like a year, I was like, oh, I can be Brenden and a missionary, instead of one or the other, like that mattered.
I've got a story.
Right.
You ready for
Go ahead.
this?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when I was on my mission, there was this one time that we got to do a play, and it was so dorky. We had this Book of Mormon that was basically a cardboard box. It was awesome. But at one point I was Alma the Younger, and repent ye. And we had this big massive Book of Mormon we held over our head. Wow. It was so dorky.
Right.
Because you do that stuff as a missionary, but I don't think people care about you until they realize that, we're all human. We all make mistakes. We all have a dorky side.
Right.
Guys, if you don't think I'm a dork, you don't know me well enough. I'm a dork. And that's okay to be silly at times. There is a time and a place for all things.
Right.
And if you're like, hey, it's time to be serious, let's be serious.
Right.
If it's time to have fun, let's go goof off and have some fun.
Bingo.
And one of the things I've learned from being a theater practitioner, being an actor, being a teacher of acting, is every single person has that story within them. And it is a skill set to be able to bring it out. Talent only gets you to the starting line. What gets you to the finish line is taking that talent and saying, how can I make this a little better? Let's make this next iteration a little bit better. Is there anything else that I'm missing? Where are my blind spots? And that's why you need a coach. That's why I pay for coaches. That's why I'm like, when I was in soccer, I didn't just show up and be like, oh, I'm a great goalkeeper. I sucked for a long time. I had the innate talent to start, but I wasn't good at the beginning. Lots of stuff got past me. I was a fat little kid. I really enjoyed playing though. It was fun. But at some point, you're like, if I'm going to be competitive, I need to work on my skills. And that is something you can do in storytelling. It's a muscle.
Yeah, it really
There you
is.
go.
So how do we bridge that gap between creativity and action in business? Because a lot of creatives I know, my experience with musicians is I was always a little different. I felt like for some reason that whenever we'd go do a show, I'd be there. Okay, sweet. We're gonna do this. We're gonna set up sound check. Show about 5 minutes early. Be there waiting for the sound guy to go in. We get our stuff done, get it set up, and we're ready to go. Most of the musicians are 25 minutes late, lackadaisical, hard to rely on, hard to get a hold of. That's the musician world. I don't know if actors are this way as much, if they're as much prima donna, but how do you take that like creative? Because a lot of creatives are, it's ambient. There's a billion ideas. There's all these abstract things, and to get them focused and channel that. People who maybe grew up as musicians or theater kids, and they want to get into business. Like, how do we take that really ambient ideas and who you are as a creative person and channel it into a business context?
Let me share the difference between community theater and professional theater. This is how this happens. When you are a amateur, you work on it until you get it right. You work on it and you're like, hey, I did that pretty well. I kind of got that. I figured it out. I got most of those chords right. When you're a professional, you work at it until you don't get it wrong. And then you work at it until you don't get it wrong. And then you work at it until it becomes second nature. And then you work at it and you work at it and you work at it and you play with it and you elevate it and you ask other people and you get back until it's not just I can't get it wrong. It's this is so much better than it possibly could have been if I would have stayed at good enough. Professional works at it and works at it and works at it. One of the things that you see in the professional world is people often come to the first rehearsal memorized, or they come to the first rehearsal almost to the point where like, this is the best I can do on my own. If you showed up in business to say, this is my best work today that I can do on my own, what type of feedback could you get and where could you go?
In my industry, it's very easy because we have physical thing like, hey, here's a video. This is what we've done on our own. What do you think? We get obviously it's feedback loops all the time, but other contexts it can be tough.
It can be tough. On
Especially
a song, is there any way you can make a song more dynamic, more interesting,
Yeah.
more playful? And as you are performing it, there are certain elements that you're like, how can we bring this part out more?
right.
How can we make this slightly more melodic? How can we make this dissonant here?
Right.
And
How
you're
to
playing
mix
with
it up.
all these different elements. And that's where a professional is different than an amateur. An amateur is like, let's just lay down the tape, brother. We got it down mostly.
Yeah. Yep. And it's cool because you can see the difference in the quality. I've seen with my band whenever we just like, okay, we'll just rehearse the day before and we'll just do it, is different than we've done 10 shows. We've played these songs 100 times in the last month. You're so in the element, you're not thinking about it. It's identical to in a business context too. If you know everything you talk about in and out, you know the strategies, you know how it can help the people you work with, you know your testimonials and your story off the top of your head. It's so well rehearsed and so well versed. People just can't help but to listen.
Think
You
about
know
it this
yourself.
way. Like, I want you to pretend like you're a little kid again, like, 7 or 8 years old. You're in middle school. Not middle school. You'd be super smart if you're in middle school. I'm
Right,
talking about like
absolutely.
elementary school,
Brilliant.
right? And then you got this little bully. And he comes up and he like smacks you in the back of the head. You're like, ow, what the heck? And then the next day, you see the same bully. Are you going to stand in the same place that you did yesterday? Or are you going to move?
Right.
You're like, I'm not going to let that happen to me again. You move. Sometimes when we have experiences, they come to us for a reason. If we don't move because of the smack, sometimes they come to us as a punch, like kick to the balls.
Right.
And eventually in business, if we don't learn from our mistakes, they can take us out of business. Innovation is key. One of the most dangerous words or phrases you can have in business is, oh, I know that. I know how to do this. Oh, we've always done it this way.
Yep.
Okay. How long did that help, Blockbuster?
Yeah. That's a good point. If you stay complacent, the other thing people need to remember is if you're doing something, you're going to make mistakes. If you just are doing,
Love mistakes.
yeah, mistakes are, that was probably the biggest slap in the face after graduating college. Was in college, you have to nail everything. You get A's, and that's like you know you did it well enough when the professor's like, okay, we're good. Now there's no back and forth. It's like you get a one chance, you do it, that's done. That's not how the real world is. In the real world, hey, here's the first draft. What do you think? fix it. Okay, fix it, fix it. It gets better as you go. And the more that you've learned to see what those draft stages are and you can predict it, then you can get to that next level even faster. And you're constantly learning and improving. But you make mistakes constantly. Like the first projects I did as a freelancer, even garbage now. I look back at them, they're horrible because where I've been and where I'm going now, it just, you learn and you grow, but it takes the mistakes.
Yeah.
It takes like, you don't know, if you don't know graphic design and then you decide, okay, now I want to do graphic design, I want to do a logo, you would make choices prior until you learn the principles that you'd be like, oh, that makes me sick to look at now that I know what I need to know now. You learn the proximity and the rule of thirds and how and white space, and now you understand like, okay, we don't want to fill the entire space with just stuff. We want to think logically into how we position it so it's not first and foremost readable. And now you look back at your stuff. I look back at the stuff I did in high school and I'm like, whoa, this is horrible. So
and that's part of it.
And that's part of it. You make mistakes because if you do anything, you're going to screw up at some point very quickly.
Let me add something really quick. This is coming from theater and specifically the improv world.
Yeah.
If you think of a mistake as something that you can justify in the end, it is possible that that can actually be to your benefit. Now, does that mistake instruct the next scene? Does it help you get a little bit closer to your end goal? This is something that you'll notice when you're doing an improv show. I don't know if you guys have ever been to an improvisational theater show. I did a lot of them in college. I love them.
Drop a clip of Ted in here.
Of who?
Of Ted.
Oh,
yeah. I won't say it. I'll let the clip talk.
Oh goodness. But one of the things that you'll notice when there's a great improvisational theater show is you will have a moment that pops up and you're like, oh, that landed with the audience. It will creep its way back in later in the show. That's called a callback joke.
Right.
But often that comes from a mistake. But if you look at your mistakes as a finality, something that's finished, then you don't get the punchline.
Yeah.
Right? You get them moving in one direction and you're like, all right, that mistake, that was so good. And then you get it, land your punchline later on and you call back to it. Now that mistake edified the entire performance and it seemed intentional. How can you take the mistakes in your business and say, how does this become instructive? Yeah. What can I learn from this? What can I do because of this? It's an opportunity, right? It's a faithful attempt in learning. That's what failure is.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting as you talk about an opportunity as well. Sometimes there have been fills on stage when I do a drum fill and I'll screw it up.
When you say fill, for those that don't do
In
music,
between so you think of a basic rock beat like boots and cats and boots and cats. In between that, you'll do a
boots
and cats.
Boots and cats.
That's what people like.
I like it.
So in between that, you're doing a fill to break it up. Because if you think about a beat, if it's just the same thing nonstop, it gets really boring. So you do a fill to break it up and make it interesting. Sometimes when I do a fill in some spots, I won't do it how the recording is. And I'll be like, dang, I wish I did that in the recording now because that actually turned out better and it was a mistake at the time. But there are things like that can become, all right, that's going to be how I play it now going forward because I like the way that felt. I felt like it led into the chorus really well. I felt like it had this different moment that captured it better than even when we did it in the recording. So when you go to a live show, you may see things like that. Or maybe they play a guitar riff and this happens in jazz more often than it happens in rock music because rock music, you're in the pocket, you're playing pentatonic scales, you're doing you try to make every note in the scale. You're not trying to do anything fancy or funky. But in jazz, people play off or out, which means that they will sometimes go out of key to do something interesting and pop back into key. And it's from the outsider's ear. If you're not used to listening to jazz, that's 100% sounds like garbage. If you've not been had your ear trained for that. But when you are used to jazz music, you're like, wow, that's amazing. That's extremely impressive. But that mistake can turn into something incredible, especially if it was like, oh, I popped a note off. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go out for a second. And we're just going to mess with that. And we're going to explore this idea, few notes, repeat the motif, adjust the motif. And it's all a mistake. It spawned from a mistake and it became something better. And so life is more like jazz rather than just a pre-recorded. It's got to be perfect. And we live in such a polished life. But if you are working in your business like it's jazz, oh, I made this mistake like say, for example, you accidentally over ordered products for your business. Say you sell shoes and you got from the manufacturer, you got 20,000 shoes sitting in your garage. You just found an opportunity to have a flood sale and really blow up the potential for your shoes. You just went into debt on accident. You have an opportunity to do something unique and interesting. You have an opportunity to create some content to try and move these shoes really quick because you got a shitload sitting in the garage right now. And so the idea is mistakes are positive, right? It's amazing.
That just reminded me of a story that my friend Woody Woodward shared with me. There, 1900s, there was this coat salesman, and he had a surplus of coats, and he wasn't moving them. It was just not working. So he did something that was very unique. He hung them on the outside of the building, on a skyscraper, and they sold out. And you think about the dramatic and the thematic and all the different elements of business. Like if you're talking about marketing, was that a dramatic demonstration? 100%. Did that get people talking? Yeah. Did that get people to stop? 100%. Sometimes you'll have like, what do they call those? Like window, like you can walk by a window and you see all these little things that are set up in there, like a window display, right? Yeah. One of the things I learned as well is sometimes in window displays, they will have one little element. Maybe they'll have like 12 sets of dishes perfectly aligned and then one broken dish on the side. It'll bring people in and say, hey, did you notice there's a broken dish? Like, yeah, thank you so much for letting us know. Have you seen our dishes? Anytime that you can have a little pattern interrupt, or you can have a story that is, even if it's a slight little bit imperfect, imperfection is part of humanity. That's part of your story. And there's nothing wrong with imperfection. Think about imperfection like this. If you have imperfection and you have space for that imperfection, what does that become? Space. Imperfect, and you take that and you make a space. I'm perfect. Is that cool or what?
I like it.
Freaking cool.
I hope you get a motion graphic for that.
Yeah, I'm perfect. Yeah, I'm perfect. Just get a little bit of Siri voice.
Exactly. Awesome. I think it's cool because that transitions well into the last two topics, which are going to be about social media, and we'll dive into your free opt-in, free download about social media strategy. But yeah, so you're gonna I think we can maybe even dive into that first.
Let's pull this up so we can experience it.
My background, so people know, is social media management. I do that for my side agency and freelancing, but for my day job, we produce a lot of reels and shorts and TikToks for clients, 30 to 60 to 90 a month that we do for people, and then we help them launch and deploy it. And so when you're making that much content and you're strategizing with people, and we write the scripts, we help them, they record remotely, they send us the content, we edit it, we deploy it for them so that they don't have to think about it. The only thing they have to do is sit in front of a camera, read our scripts, read the ideas, and then we crank is the idea. And so with that, we get a lot of data really quickly, what works, what doesn't. The most important thing is you need a hook. So you need something dramatic. Like
the coats, right? You need something that gets people to actually stop what they're doing and then engage with you. So
that's why I go back to the rock and roll startup. Is I like the perspective, since I have that music background, the best musicians to grab attention are the ones that have a little bit of a shock factor. They speak in headlines, or they are brash in the way they dress. Like you think about the 80s hair metal or just hair bands in general. They wore women's clothing and people were like, what the freak is this? But they really just play like blues rock that's a little fast and have wicked great guitar solos. It's not
it's a hook to bring them in.
To bring them in. It's an interesting style about it. You know, it spawns from glam and having something that's shocking and interesting. And you can use those guerrilla principles in anything, right? So
yeah, let's play with this. I'll share this idea. So schedule, right?
So this is part of your.
This is part of my ebook. This is called Leveling Up Your Social Media.
How do people find this?
How they find it? I'm literally going to have it in the show notes. I actually have it on all of my podcast show notes up to date, so you can find it anywhere. And you'll find it on my Bitly link. So you can click that, or you can grab out your QR code and look at the screen. So you're going to schedule what are you already doing, right? Actually look at your schedule. Like, what am I already doing in my life, in my business, that you can document? And I'm not talking about creating new content. I'm not talking about creating things that are different. Like, you don't have to sit down and say, it is content creation time. You say, he's silly, but you say, what am I already doing in my business? How can I allow this to be documented or recorded? And then how can I repurpose this in multiple ways, right? It has to be easy. Otherwise it will not get done. That is something very, very common. And I notice it will or may not get done. Notice this is something that I put together so that people can see. You don't have to be perfect to get the content out. But one of the things that I do is to call batching. And when you're batching, that's saying, here's when I'm doing things. So for my podcast, for instance, I do 2 podcasts on a Thursday. I don't do 1, I do 2. And then I'm getting a week ahead. And as I consistently do that, I'll be able to put them out farther and farther and farther. And one of the reasons you do that is it makes it easier on you. If you do 2 at the same time as you're doing 1,
you're already set up.
You're
You've
set
already got
up.
the gear going, the recording's going. You've got the guests. You're in the mode. You know how to structure things. You're already dressed
Exactly.
for it. You've got your hair done. Like there's so many things.
I cut out half of my work is
Right,
what I did.
Right, you did. You don't have to redo you don't have to start over twice. And I think just to
Yeah,
give
go
my
ahead.
my 2 cents on this is making it super smooth and easy
Mhm.
is number one, because in all honesty, it's not that hard. We have a content production agency access on your phone. You have
Yeah.
a 4K camera. It has a decent microphone, but you don't need stuff like this. You really don't. You can just do it with your mic. And you just need a tripod and a ring light, and you can make
Done.
stuff that goes really well on everything. The most important thing, like you're saying, is a story, because you think about TikTok, those TikTok videos look like garbage. I'm sorry.
A lot of them.
And having worked in video and just seeing the difference, grainy, it's weird. It's in theory, if you were a video editor from 10 years ago and you were brought to today to watch what short form is, you would be really, really weirded out, especially if you're like a film editor. And so as what that brings back though is, as you're making this content, the accessibility and things is to, oh,
We got some people walking in.
So cut this when you're,
No, you're good. Whatever. We'll just keep going.
Yeah, you're Ollie or whatever, and have them chop that
Yeah.
up.
Shout out to Ali. You're the best. I love you,
I
brother.
don't know if
Thank you for
I don't think
editing
we're
all
doing this
these.
live, but are we?
No,
Okay.
I know. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
He's
sorry.
awesome.
Oh yeah,
So
great.
he's great.
Nice job. Okay. So going back to when you're making something and you make the opportunity to do it really simple, then it can work. One thing that my boss, Dallin Need, always tells me is, and tells a lot of our clients, is have a place that you have that's ready to shoot right now. Always a place in your house. You have this. I have this as well, that in my office, I have my little tripod that is right behind my computer. I've got my lighting and I've got everything dialed in that I'm like, okay, I'm going to record something. I'm going to take 20 minutes to do it. Do this, plug it in, turn on the light,
Lights, camera,
record,
action, go.
literally. And that's about
Like,
how fast
bam.
that's how fast you should have your setup. So you can do it. It reduces a lot of headache. It maybe take a little while to learn the things, but if you know Zoom, if you know Riverside, these things are possible. So batch recording, like you're saying, some of the algorithms don't like it. Some of the things don't, but as a business owner, you only have so much time. So starting somewhere is important, and getting things out there and sharing your story is important, but also making sure that it is relevant to the people you talk to. If it's relevant now and it's relevant in 6 months, batch it. That's fine. If it's relevant only right now, you can't batch it. You got to do it right now. So that's the other thing. If you talk about timeless principles a lot like you do, then it's fine to batch things. But sometimes you'll say, so for example, right when this podcast is being recorded a couple weeks ago, non-complete clauses and contracts are basically null and void right now. That was something
that's
recently
crazy.
happened. So
It's
it's crazy,
like,
right?
done.
That's really unique and interesting right now. But in 5 years from now, if this podcast gets listened to, they're gonna be like,
Who cares?
who cares? That
know
was a
that.
long
This is
time ago.
Long time ago.
Has been irrelevant for years. And so
That's why I have to be careful with trending content.
exactly, that is a great point. So to get trends is great to get eyeballs on things right now. But if you are slow and steady on what you do, and you keep the war train going, for lack of a better term, that is important, because hopping on trending stuff is great to get views initially. And that's why it's good to do reaction videos, because I think that's probably one of the better ways that you can batch a lot of content, piggyback off of other people's things. It could be trending at that moment, but it still is relevant because it's in context. When you watch the video, you have a reaction.
Yeah.
So those are really good. Your talking head videos, if you're talking about something that's relevant, it's tough when you have an industry that moves the needle a lot. My industry moves the needle a lot. So some things are hard to be more timeless principle wise. Real estate laws change
Not nearly as fast.
not nearly as fast as content trends. And so you can dial in on some of those things. You may have updates in like Airbnb laws and when it gets illegal or legalized in places. But the important thing is that when you're recording, make it easy, like you're saying. And if you are talking about timeless things, then batch it. But if you don't, then you need to find a VA or someone that can have the time to be able to post those things on a regular basis so that you can accomplish it. You need a team to do this. If you try and do it all yourself, it's going to not happen. And so finding someone that you know that edits, and either do a retainer deal with them and just pay them to do it, or say like, hey, I'm offering an internship, edit for me. I'll write you the best letter of recommendation to any film school you want. Like, there's a lot of people who want to get into this. There's a ton of opportunity, and
And they need experience.
they need experience. This is a great way for it can be a
huge.
great win-win that way. And so if you don't have a budget, that's the way to do it. If you do have a budget and you have a lot of money, hire an agency. They're gonna be able to crank out the output that you need.
Yeah.
I would say hire an agency like a content supply, or um, a bigger, even larger agency that has that experience to know how to produce these things too. Because then you get the consistency, and you have the obligation, because you're paying somebody to show up. And it gets really, I've had some clients that they pay us, and then we wait on them to give us stuff. And it's like, come on, let's go. And we don't hold, like, we'll usually like pause the retainer and like, okay, you got this many video credits. We'll finish them when you get us the stuff. But some agencies will be like, the money's gone. If you don't give us something within 30 days, that money goes in the pocket and we move on. That works for some people. If you need that kick in the pants, sometimes that's the type of person you should hire. But if, I just think the consistency, the quality and the quantity index.
You technically need both, but the more quality you have and the more evergreen, the easier. So this is something that Bradley V, I love this specific little video. You can go check that. It is a link in my podcast. I'll put it in the description. But just be the content. You don't have to be anybody else. And one of the things that I've learned is when you're documenting, it's about having a conversation. It's about sharing your story. Because guess what? You're the only one that has that specific story. You're the only one with your specific background.
Right.
And if you share your experiences, your reactions to certain things, eventually your content will start to find your people, and your vibe attracts your tribe. Thank you, Rob Sperry, because I love that little quote.
That was a fantastic quote. Your vibe attracts your tribe.
Your
You got
vibe
that on a
attracts your tribe.
t-shirt?
Oh, we could probably put that on a t-shirt.
You should put that on a t-shirt.
That'd
You
be
should
sweet.
sell it. Sell it. I'd put that on a mug
You put that on a mug.
or a sticker.
And here's the other thing. When you are taking your content and you're saying, here's a long form piece of content. Maybe you're doing a podcast like what we're doing. We're just having a conversation. We're talking about something specific, hopefully adding some value to your life. You can cut this up into multiple pieces, right? Say, hey, what is something of value that in 30 seconds or less, someone could find this and then start to drink our Kool-Aid, start to get connected to us, right?
I don't know if I like the Kool-Aid analogy.
I know.
But I get I think it's smart though, that as we've talked about these things, there's been probably about 6 or 7 different spots that are very unique stories. They're succinct, and that you get the picture. You visually illustrate it, right? When you're mixing things up, it just helps you see things. An analogy, right? Parables, whatever you want to call it, to have something visual. That's why songwriters aren't so literal, right? You think they're very poetic because they paint a picture that helps you understand how they feel. There could be, I'm a big Beatles fan, so a lot of those songs really are pretty literal. That's how I roll. But there could be lyrics that like smells like Teen Spirit. What the freak does that mean, right? It may mean nothing, but it's more of just the emotion behind it. It smells like angst. It smells like, it just feels like there's this desire to just move forward in life. You're angry, you feel kind of trapped, and you're just trying to break free from that. That phrase can go a ton of different ways. And so when you are using story, share these things, there's different mediums that can do the same thing, which is interesting. And this translates to social media too, with your content, having it be you. What are you interested in? What do you talk about? What is your particular style you go about things? Like, I'm not a super brash person. I've been loud in the past. I like playing drums loud and I like singing loud, but when I talk with people one-on-one, I like to be real and authentic. And this is me. I'm not trying to fake anything. So some people like that, some people don't, and that's okay.
But don't get me wrong, he can be very loud.
Right.
He can be super loud.
For sure.
And
100%.
There's a time and a place for everything.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with just being you
Have it be
in this specific context, and then saying, you know what, as an actor, this is me in this context.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you take your experience and you have a different way that you perform. I learned this in my BYU performativity class. Every single rite, every ceremony that we experience, the environment will dictate a lot of your appropriate behavior. What's appropriate in this setting may not be appropriate somewhere else. Like if
Yeah.
you're at a funeral, we're not going to be talking out loud. We're not even going to be super expressive. We're going to be kind of really quiet.
Right.
And we're going to not let other people know we're talking.
Right. But then on the flip side, if you're in a hyper energetic environment, like a Tony Robbins thing, or if you're at a concert and you're just standing there and you're
really quiet.
it-
Everyone's going to be like,
everyone
what
else
is
is
wrong
awkward.
with you, dude?
Everyone else, like if you're at the damn show, mosh, like don't just sit in the back and sit on the side and like just like be in the moment. Like it's an important element too. It goes to show like, and you as you document these things, like if you are just one of those people that's just a wallflower, that's great. Like document that. There's a lot of people on Book Talk and all those things that they're a wallflower and they live with that, and a ton of people are that way. Be yourself.
You will resonate with those
You'll
people,
resonate with
and
those
that's
people,
okay.
and that's great. You know, there's ways that those people can make money with the content and be relevant on social media. So I think this guide is great, and I just wanted to dive into that one piece.
Yeah, that last little bit, just
that's
be the
what,
content.
3/4 of the way through it.
This is only page 17. It's 33 pages long.
Okay, so we're about halfway through of the guide. So have people download it. I think it's a great place to start if they don't know strategy, or if they just need some context in strategy to continue to level up. So I think it's awesome. So you guys check that out, as well as you know, I'm Brenden Blackham, Rock and Roll Startup. That's what the podcast I run. I work content supply. If you want to connect with me, best place is LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. And so Brenden Blackham, Brigham's little brother. But yeah, and if you're interested in,
he doesn't have that hyphenated Brigham's little brother, so you'll have to just find Brenden Black.
Yeah, you got to find Brenden Black. But we'll share this stuff and you know, connect, reach out. I'm down to be friends and chat with anybody. I'm sure there's synergy anywhere that we can work with. I'm a collaborator. I don't like some people are super competitive on things. I'm not.
Yeah.
I am one of those, like, if you do the exact same thing as me, I want to talk to you because I think there's some cool things I can learn from you. I maybe got some other ideas and we can help each other grow, because there's plenty of room for everybody. And so that's all about me. So
that's the abundance mindset. You think about it. We're about collaborative capitalism.
Yeah.
If you get better, I get better. If I get better, you get better. And the entire market gets better.
You heard of the concept, grow the pie?
Grow the pie, make the pie bigger.
Make the pie bigger. Yeah. So instead of just saying like, oh, this is my slice of the pie, this is your slice of the pie, we don't touch each other and we're trying to compete for that. If we just stay in our lanes and grow the pie collectively, we all win.
Just bake more pies.
Right.
You're like, let's just learn the recipe to bake the pie. And you're like, you can have some pie. I'm going to have my own pie. And then you're going to have your own pie. And let's just make more pies together.
Right.
And you can get 2 or 3 pies and I get 5 or 6. And it's fine.
Right. The idea is just turn everybody into a pie addict, and then everybody gets more pie addict. That's the idea.
I love it. But that's part of this whole journey. None of us are perfect. None of us have the answer. But as we are working together, when we're collaborating, there is a synergy.
What's the hero's journey?
Hero's journey, baby.
They have the struggles, they have the pain, and as they build to the biggest moment, their moment to shine, that's where things happen. But it wasn't easy. It was rocky the whole way there. Luke Skywalker, man, he struggle, loser. And then all of a sudden, you know, Obi-Wan comes along and okay, sweet, now he got his hand cut off and now he's legit. So everybody has that story arc, and everybody needs to have that moment. Everybody has that moment if you're ready for it, to be at the center of it at the end of it. But also remember that after the climax,
there is a denouement. There is a falling action.
And so but that's why you tell the story again. You find another moment to be the hero's journey, make your clients the hero. And it comes back to story. Like we're talking about the same stuff in different ways, but social media story is make your clients the hero. And as you tell your story and you bring them along with you, and you're the guide and they're the hero, everything is going to work out. Right. It's just a matter of time before people get on your clip. Right?
Yoda, you are, right? Yeah, absolutely. You are not the hero of that story. You are a guide. And when you are willing to be the guide for somebody and to be their pillar, to be someone that takes them along and say, hey, let's let you live in your greatness. Let's help you go from where you were in your old world, cross that threshold into your new world, hit the climax of earning exactly what you wanted, hitting and reaching your goals. And then you can come back as a champion, come back as a hero. And you get that medal and you get Chewbacca. You know what I'm talking about?
Rinse and repeat, and you get the another success story and another success story, and it just stacks up. So
absolutely.
I think that's a big win. Hopefully everybody learns something. I think there's a lot here that people can chew on, learn from. There's a lot of line items, and that they download your lead magnet. I think that'd be great. I need to get on that type of stuff too.
For sure, man.
But yeah,
you got to keep it simple. Every single one of you guys have an ebook in you. I hope you know that.
Oh yeah.
Literally, you got 10 or 20 pages in you that you're like, man, if I boiled down my experiences into something that can save somebody a week or 2 weeks or a couple months or a year's worth of struggle, why not go put it on paper? There's no barrier to entry on that. You can use a Google Doc.
Right.
But if you want some value, what I've done is I've spent 3.5, almost 4 years creating social media content specific for business. And I was like, here's what's worked for me. Here's what's not. Just, you can model and mimic what I've done. And if something's valuable, use it. If you're like, that doesn't work for me, fine. You never know what's going to work. So I hope this was valuable for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning to the Levelin Up podcast and the
Rock and Roll Startup. Thank you so much.
Sweet.
Rock on.
Rock on, guys. God bless. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you for joining us on the Rock and Roll Startup Podcast. If you're interested in being a guest, visit us at videosupply.com/contact. Again, videosupply.com/contact and inquire about the podcast. Also, if you're interested in utilizing our video services, book a time with us, and we'd love to sit down and chat and see what your goals are. Again, thank you for joining us for the Rock and Roll Startup.